Welcome back. In this section, we'll talk about sudo and su commands. So what is this sudo and su? Sudo allows a permitted user to execute a command as a super user, which means if you want to give access to a normal user to execute as a super user commands, then we should provide him as a sudo access. And what is su? Su is a switch user. So whenever you want to switch from one user to another user, then we will use su command. So let's go to the terminal and we'll practice both of these commands. So as of now, I connected to this Ubuntu machine with the Rajesh user account. So let's discuss first about the su command. So su command is very simple to execute. So whenever you want to switch from one user account to the another user account, we use su. So here if we use su hyphen and the username, so what are the username you want to switch, you can switch. And if I want to switch to the Navin user account, I can give su hyphen Navin. And now it is asking for the password. Now you need to give the password of the Navin user account. So just give the password and Navin can able to log in into the same terminal. So the same terminal we can log in with the multiple users. So now I switch to Navin user. So in this manner, whenever we want to switch between the users, we can use su command. And now let's talk about the sudo access. First of all, as I said, why we need to have sudo access to a user. Basically, we have three types of users like normal user, super user and system users. So we don't create system users and we don't need to talk about system users now. And we need to talk about super user, which is a root. By default, root is available inside the operating system whenever we install or we create virtual machine inside the cloud environment. By default, we have those super users. So when we create normal users, so normal users can execute only few commands, but normal user cannot able to reboot the server, or normal user cannot able to change the system settings, or normal user cannot able to create another user accounts, or normal users cannot able to modify the network settings. So if I want to give access to a user to become as a super user, then we need to provide that user as a sudo access. So super user do. So now what we'll do, we provide sudo access to one of the user and we'll see whether that user can able to do the changes in the OS level, or whether he can able to reboot the machine, or whether he can able to create the user accounts. So for that, first of all, we need to be inside this root account, and before that, as a normal user, let me try with some commands. So as of now, I'll exit with the Navin user account and I'll be in the Rajesh user account, and let me clear my screen. And here I'll just try to add a user add and user 3. See here, we got an error. Cannot log etc password because try again later. Permission denied. User add command cannot able to executed by the normal user. So to do this, we need to be a root. So what I'll do, I'll go to the another terminal where I already log in as a root account. So here we have a file called etc sudoers. So let me open that file called etc sudoers. So this is a file where we need to provide access to the users to get the super user power. So let me open this file. So once I open this file, if you see here, the first line, the file must be edited with the vi sudo command as a root. So even though if this file is available, we should not directly use vi or nano command on this file. So we should use this command to modify. So later on we'll modify this file, but as of now we'll see what are the details available inside this file. If you see here, user privilege specification. So in this file, these three lines are very important. If you see here, the root, all, and here you can see the percentage sudo all. So what is the difference between this? So root is having full permissions to execute any commands. And what is this sudo? Sudo is a group name which is already by default created inside the groups. If you go and check in the etc group, there we can see sudo. And for whoever, if in case if we add any user inside this sudo group, then that user also will get all the privileges. So we need to understand what is this all belongs to. We can see four alls over here, root, and for group also we can see. So let's discuss in detail about what about this alls. If you see here in the sudo's file, we can see for root account, so all equal to bracket all colon all and then the fourth all. So the first all indicates that this rule applies to all hosts, which means this all belongs to its a host name. So to whichever machine we are connected, the root can able to execute all the commands inside that host. And the second all indicates that the user can run commands as all users. So the second all, if you see this one, this is like a user and this is like a group, which means let's say in that particular host, if you have 100 users and for 50 users you assigned as a sudo permission, then all those 50 users can able to execute. Why? Because here in the user section we have all. For example, here if we specify only specific username, then only that particular user can able to access as a sudo user. So that's the reason here it is mentioned all, because to which how many user accounts you provide sudo access, all those user accounts can able to access as a root. Means you are providing that specific users as a root permission, then those users can also able to execute commands like a root. And same way the third all indicates that the root user can run commands as all groups, which means here if you create multiple groups and you add those groups inside this sudo's file and you add some of the users inside that sudo's file, then all those users inside that group also can able to execute commands as a root. So here for the group also it is defined as all instead of specific group names. So if you want you can specify any specific group name, but it is not recommended. So whatever the groups are available inside this sudo's file, those groups also can able to execute commands as a root user account. And this fourth all indicates this rules applies to all commands, which means here root can able to execute all the commands. Same way for your group, if you mention this all, then the user accounts which are inside that group also able to execute these commands. So now if you go back to the session, so here we can see a group called, if you see here, allow members of a group sudo to execute any command, which means this is a group. If you add any user inside this group, that user also can able to execute all the commands inside this host. Okay, so let's give a try. I am going to add a user account inside this sudo group and will try to execute some commands to create a user account or to reboot the server. So now what I'm going to do, first I'll check whether this sudo group is available or not. So I'm executing cat etc group grep -i sudo. So by default if you see sudo group is available and Ubuntu user is added inside this sudo group. So when we created this EC2 virtual machine, at that time we got this Ubuntu. So always we were executing sudo su hyphen so that we can able to get root access for this Ubuntu. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a user inside this sudo's group so that that user will get special privileges or super user privileges to that specific user. So let's see how to add it. Let's clear the screen. So we need to execute a command called user mode -a g and the group name and the username to which we want to add into the sudo's group. So let me add Navin into this sudo's group. So once done, let's check. We can execute the groups command. So it will display all the groups which are available. Instead of executing cat etc group, we can execute groups command also. This will also work. So now if you see, where is the sudo here, and here if you see sudo, under the sudo Navin is also added. So now let's go and try with the Navin user account whether he can able to execute user add or reboot commands. So now I connected as a Navin user. Now let me try to create a user account. User add user 4. I couldn't able to create a user account. Now what I'll do, I'll try to execute sudo command sudo and then I'll add user add with user 4. And instead of user add command, I would like to use add user and user 4. So now if you see, it is trying to create a user account, but before that it is asking for the password. So here you need to give the Navin user account's password, and then it is acting like a super user now. Now it is trying to create a user account. If you see here, this is a username, group name, everything is getting created, and it is asking for provide the password for the user 4. So we can give what are the password we want, user 4, and then it is asking these details. Just ignore this, done. So now this way Navin can able to execute any commands because Navin has been added into the sudo's group so that he can able to execute any commands. So now if you want to see what are the privileges is available for Navin user account, just you can execute sudo -l. So it will list out what are the privileges are available for the Navin user account. And if you see here, so it's showing all. So you can execute any commands inside this complete host. Now we'll see how to restrict a user to execute specific commands in the next video. Bye for now.